On September 19, 1991, two German tourists, Helmut and Erika Simon, were hiking in the Uestal Alps along the border between Austria and Italy. They were experienced mountaineers familiar with the challenges and rewards of high-altitude hiking, but nothing in their experience had prepared them for what they would discover that day. The summer of 1991 had been unusually warm in the Alps, causing more extensive glacial melting than had occurred in many years. Ancient ice that had remained frozen for millennia was finally releasing its secrets to the warming air and increasing solar radiation. This climatic anomaly created the perfect conditions for one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the modern era. The Simons were following a well-established hiking route when they noticed something unusual protruding from the ice. At first glance, it appeared to be the remains of a modern mountaineer who had suffered an accident and been preserved by the glacier. Such discoveries, while tragic, were not entirely uncommon in the Alps, where the mountains claimed lives regularly and sometimes held their victims for decades before releasing them. But as they approached the site, details began to emerge that suggested something far more extraordinary. The clothing visible above the ice was unlike any modern hiking gear they had seen. The leather appeared to be of an unusual type and construction, and there were objects nearby that seemed to be made from materials and in styles that belonged to no contemporary outdoor equipment they could recognize. The Simons reported their discovery to local authorities, initiating a chain of events that would involve multiple governments, numerous scientific institutions, and hundreds of researchers over the subsequent decades. The initial response reflected the assumption that this was a modern casualty, and the recovery efforts proceeded according to established protocols for alpine accidents. Local mountain rescue teams were dispatched to the scene, bringing equipment appropriate for extracting a modern corpse from glacial ice. The challenging location, at an elevation of over 10,000 feet and requiring several hours of hiking to reach, limited the initial response to essential personnel and basic equipment. The first attempts at extraction were hampered by the body's position and the hardness of the surrounding ice. Traditional ice axes and basic tools made slow progress, and the risk of damaging the remains became apparent as more of the body was exposed. What had initially appeared to be a routine, if tragic, recovery was becoming something much more complex. As more of the warriors' possessions came to light, the rescue team began to realize they were dealing with something unprecedented. The copper axe, in particular, caught the attention of responders who recognized that its design and materials were unlike anything they had seen before. Calls were made to archaeological authorities, transforming what had begun as a rescue mission into a scientific excavation. The involvement of professional archaeologists changed the entire character of the discovery. Dr. Konrad Spindler, an archaeologist at the University of Innsbruck, was among the first experts to examine the site and immediately recognized the extraordinary significance of the find. His expertise in prehistoric European cultures allowed him to identify the artifacts and remains as dating from the late Neolithic or early Bronze Age. The shift from rescue operation to archaeological excavation required entirely different approaches and equipment. The site had to be secured, documented, and excavated using methods that would preserve every possible piece of information while protecting the integrity of the remains and associated artifacts. Weather conditions added urgency to the operation. The brief alpine summer was ending, and soon the site would be buried under winter snows for months. The team had only a narrow window to extract the warrior and his possessions before the mountain reclaimed them for another season. International cooperation became necessary as the exact location of the discovery straddled the border between Austria and Italy. Diplomatic negotiations ensured that the recovery could proceed smoothly, while determining which country would ultimately have custody of the remains. This international dimension would continue throughout the research process, as scholars from multiple countries contributed expertise and resources to the study. The actual extraction of the warrior's body and artifacts required innovative techniques that balanced archaeological precision with the practical constraints of high-altitude work. Traditional archaeological tools proved inadequate for working with the dense glacial ice, while heavy machinery risked destroying the very materials the team was trying to preserve. The solution involved a combination of carefully applied heat, precision tools, and painstaking manual work. Hair dryers powered by portable generators provided controlled heat to soften the ice, while dental tools and small brushes allowed for precise excavation around delicate materials like leather and wood. Each artifact and piece of organic material had to be documented in its exact position before removal, creating a three-dimensional map of how the warrior's possessions were arranged at the time of discovery. This spatial information would prove crucial for understanding the circumstances of his death and the sequence of events that led to his preservation. The warrior's body itself presented unique challenges. The mummified flesh, while remarkably preserved, was fragile and required special handling to prevent damage. Specialized containers were brought to the site to ensure that the remains could be transported safely to laboratory facilities where proper analysis could begin. News of the discovery quickly spread beyond the archaeological community, capturing public imagination around the world. The image of a perfectly preserved prehistoric warrior, complete with weapons and clothing, resonated with popular fascination about ancient peoples and lost civilizations. Media coverage, while bringing welcome attention to archaeological research, also created challenges for the scientific team. The remote location helped protect the site from casual visitors, but public pressure for quick answers and dramatic revelations sometimes conflicted with the careful, methodical approach required for proper scientific analysis. The warrior quickly acquired a nickname, Tedzai the Iceman, that helped personalize the discovery while making it more accessible to general audiences. This humanization of the find was both beneficial and problematic, as it encouraged public interest while sometimes oversimplifying the complex scientific work required to understand the discovery's full significance. International media attention also highlighted the importance of alpine archaeology and brought new resources and attention to research in this region. Museums competed for the opportunity to display the warrior and his artifacts, while universities sought to involve their students and faculty in the research process. The first priority for the scientific team was establishing the age and authenticity of the remains. While the style of artifacts suggested great antiquity, definitive dating required sophisticated analytical techniques that had only recently become available to archaeologists. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials associated with the warrior provided the first concrete evidence of his age. Multiple samples from different materials, wood, leather, plant fibers, all returned dates clustering around 300 years before present, confirming that this was indeed a genuine prehistoric discovery and not an elaborate hoax or recent casualty. The consistency of dates from multiple sources validated the integrity of the preservation environment and confirmed that all the associated artifacts were contemporary with the warrior's death. This synchronicity was crucial for establishing that the assemblage represented a single moment in time rather than a collection of materials from different periods. Additional dating methods, including accelerator mass spectrometry and dendrochronology, provided refined age estimates and helped establish the discovery's place within the broader chronology of European prehistory. The warrior lived during a transitional period between the Neolithic and Bronze Ages, making his equipment and clothing valuable indicators of technological and cultural changes occurring in prehistoric Europe. Once the age of the remains was established, attention turned to understanding the circumstances of the warrior's death. Forensic pathologists working with archaeologists applied modern investigative techniques to examine evidence that was over 5 millennia old. Advanced imaging techniques, including CT scans and X-rays, revealed internal injuries that were invisible to surface examination. The arrow wound was far more extensive than initially apparent, with the projectile having penetrated deeply into the shoulder and caused significant tissue damage. 3-dimensional reconstruction of the wound trajectory allowed researchers to determine the position of the archer relative to the victim, providing insights into the circumstances of the attack. The angle and depth of penetration suggested the arrow was fired from below and behind, indicating that the warrior may have been fleeing or attempting to escape when struck. Analysis of the arrowhead itself revealed sophisticated craftsmanship and material selection. The flint was of high quality and had been shaped with considerable skill to create an aerodynamically efficient and deadly projectile. The binding materials and shaft construction showed knowledge of advanced archery techniques. Additional injuries, including defensive wounds on the hands and a possible head trauma, painted a picture of multiple attackers and a sustained conflict. These injuries were consistent with combat using stone and metal weapons of the type found among the warrior's own possessions. The extraction and analysis of DNA from the warrior's remains opened new avenues of research that had been impossible in previous archaeological discoveries. The excellent preservation conditions had maintained genetic material that could be analyzed using cutting-edge molecular biology techniques. Mitochondrial DNA analysis provided information about maternal lineage and genetic relationships to other prehistoric populations. The warrior's genetic profile showed connections to other early European populations while also revealing unique characteristics that indicated genetic diversity within prehistoric communities. Y chromosome analysis traced paternal lineage and provided the foundation for later discoveries about modern descendants. The warrior's Y chromosome haplogroup was relatively rare in modern European populations but showed connections to specific geographic regions and genetic lineages. Nuclear DNA analysis, while more challenging due to degradation and contamination issues, provided additional information about physical characteristics, health conditions, and genetic predispositions. This analysis revealed that the warrior likely had brown eyes, dark hair, and was lactose intolerant, characteristics that differed from some modern alpine populations. The genetic data also provided insights into prehistoric population movements and relationships between different groups. The warrior's genetic profile suggested connections to populations from various parts of Europe, indicating that prehistoric peoples were more mobile and genetically diverse than previously thought. The warrior's equipment and clothing provided unprecedented insights into late Neolithic technology and craftsmanship. Each artifact underwent detailed analysis to understand its construction, materials, and cultural significance. The copper axe represented one of the earliest examples of sophisticated metallurgy in prehistoric Europe. Analysis revealed that the copper was of high purity and had been shaped using advanced techniques that required significant skill and knowledge. The The wooden handle showed evidence of careful selection and preparation, with the wood species chosen for its specific properties of strength and flexibility. The obsidian dagger told a story of extensive trade networks that connected the Alps to volcanic regions hundreds of miles away. The quality of the obsidian and the skill of its knapping indicated access to the finest materials and most expert craftsmen available in the prehistoric world. Textile analysis of the warrior's clothing revealed sophisticated understanding of animal hide preparation, leather working, and garment construction. Multiple animal species contributed to different parts of his outfit, with each chosen for specific properties suitable to its function. The leather showed evidence of specialized tanning techniques that improved durability and weather resistance. The warrior's bow and arrows demonstrated advanced understanding of archery technology. The bow was constructed using multiple types of wood selected for their specific properties, while the arrows showed careful attention to balance, aerodynamics, and penetration capability. Medical examination of the warrior's remains provided detailed information about health, diet, and lifestyle in prehistoric Europe. The excellent preservation allowed for analyses that were impossible with typical archaeological skeletal remains. Parasitological analysis revealed that the warrior harbored several types of intestinal parasites, providing insights into sanitation, food preparation, and health challenges in prehistoric communities. The types of parasites present indicated regular contact with domestic animals and consumption of undercooked meat. Wear patterns on teeth and bones indicated a physically demanding lifestyle that required significant strength and endurance. The warrior's musculature, still visible in the preserved tissues, showed development patterns consistent with regular use of weapons and tools. Evidence of healed injuries suggested that the warrior had survived previous conflicts and accidents. Several old fractures showed signs of proper healing, indicating that prehistoric medical knowledge included techniques for treating traumatic injuries. Analysis of stomach contents provided information about the warrior's final meal and dietary patterns. The presence of specific plant materials indicated knowledge of seasonal food sources and preparation techniques for preserving nutrition during travel. The warrior's DNA analysis occurred during a revolutionary period in genetic research when consumer DNA testing was becoming widely available and genetic databases were experiencing explosive growth. Services like 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, and others were encouraging millions of people to submit DNA samples for genealogical research, creating vast databases of genetic information from modern populations. This timing was crucial for the warrior's story. Had his DNA been analyzed even a decade earlier, the connections to modern descendants might never have been discovered simply because the comparative databases didn't exist. The convergence of ancient DNA technology with modern genetic genealogy created unprecedented opportunities for connecting prehistoric individuals with their living relatives. The process of searching for genetic matches involved comparing specific DNA sequences from the warrior with millions of modern samples in various databases. This required sophisticated computational analysis and careful statistical interpretation to identify genuine genetic relationships while filtering out random similarities and contamination artifacts. Initial searches focused on European databases, operating under the reasonable assumption that the warrior's descendants would most likely be found among populations with long histories in that region. However, the global nature of modern genetic databases meant that matches could potentially be found anywhere human migration had carried the warrior's genetic lineage. The discovery of genetic matches in American databases came as a surprise to researchers who had expected the warrior's closest living relatives to be found in alpine regions of Europe. The presence of his genetic markers in American families required explanation and opened new avenues of research into migration patterns and genetic heritage. The matches weren't isolated cases but appeared in multiple American families with diverse ethnic backgrounds and geographic origins. This pattern suggested that the warrior's genetic lineage had been carried to America through multiple independent migration events rather than a single ancestral movement. Some matches were found in families with known European ancestry whose genealogical records could be traced back to specific regions and time periods. These families provided crucial links for understanding how the warrior's genetic legacy had survived and spread across continents and centuries. Other matches appeared in families with more complex or uncertain ancestry, including individuals who had no knowledge of European heritage in their family history. These discoveries highlighted the limitations of traditional genealogical records and the power of genetic analysis to reveal hidden connections. Identifying the specific pathways by which the warrior's DNA had reached modern American families required extensive genealogical research that combined traditional historical methods with cutting-edge genetic analysis. Professional genealogists worked with genetic counselors and population geneticists to trace lineages back through centuries of records. Church registers, immigration records, census data, and other historical documents were scoured for evidence of the migration patterns that could explain the genetic connections. This work was complicated by gaps in historical records, name changes during immigration, and the general challenges of tracing families across centuries and continents. The research revealed multiple migration waves that had carried the warrior's genetic heritage from Europe to America. Medieval migrations within Europe had initially spread his lineage from the alpine regions to other parts of the continent. Later historical events including religious persecution, economic hardship, and political upheaval had motivated various descendants to emigrate to the New World. Colonial period immigration brought some lineages to America in the 17th and 18th centuries, while 19th century migration waves associated with Irish potato famine, German economic difficulties, and other European challenges brought additional carriers of the warrior's genetic markers. Understanding how the warrior's DNA had survived in modern populations required examination of the mechanisms by which genetic information passes through generations. While most genetic material is shuffled and recombined with each generation, certain portions of DNA are inherited intact, creating direct links between ancient individuals and modern descendants. Y chromosome DNA, passed from father to son virtually unchanged, provided the clearest connection between the warrior and his modern male descendants. This genetic material acts as a molecular signature that can survive thousands of years while retaining enough specificity to identify direct paternal lineage. Mitochondrial DNA, inherited exclusively through the maternal line, provided additional connections through the warrior's female descendants. While the warrior himself passed on mitochondrial DNA to all his children, only his daughters could transmit it to subsequent generations. Autosomal DNA, which comprises most of an individual's genetic material, becomes increasingly diluted with each generation as it mixes with DNA from other ancestors. However, statistical analysis could still identify shared segments that indicated common ancestry, even across dozens of generations. The warrior's genetic legacy provided insights into prehistoric and historical migration patterns that complemented and sometimes challenged existing archaeological and historical models. His DNA served as a molecular tracer that could track human movement across continents and through millennia. Analysis of modern European populations revealed that the warrior's genetic lineage had spread throughout the continent, with concentrations in certain regions that reflected historical migration and settlement patterns. These distributions provided clues about prehistoric population movements and cultural exchanges. The presence of his genetic markers in American populations reflected the complex history of European colonization and immigration to the New World. Different migration waves had carried various portions of his genetic legacy, creating a dispersed but detectable presence in modern American families. Comparison with other ancient DNA samples from archaeological sites across Europe helped establish the warrior's place within the broader patterns of prehistoric population genetics. His genetic profile shared characteristics with other early European populations while also showing unique features that reflected local adaptation and genetic drift.